Hi, folks. This is Mark Sandler with Acuitum Market Research and Consulting. Today, we're going to go through the results of the 2022 State of the Industry Survey that we conducted for the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. A little bit about this survey to get us started. Survey was conducted among members and non-members. We asked a lot about the various procedures that you guys are doing, the patient makeup of your businesses and practices, and we want to just show you what we found out in terms of what both members and non-members had to say. A little bit about this study. We collected the data for this survey between August 1st and August 31st in 2022. We had just under 500 responses that we were able to collect. We did this study several other times. The first benchmark for this was conducted in 2004, and the previous most recent study was in 2019. This report that we're going to present today focuses on the 2022 study and does some comparisons back to 2019, so you can see what trends are happening here. The cooperation rate was a little higher in this survey than with previous studies, not because more members were cooperating, but because more non-members were willing to participate in the survey this time. Okay, looking at some of the respondent demographics here, as you can see, just under half of the folks that we spoke to are AACD members. This compares to 56% in the 2019 study. Not a big difference. The increased distribution among non-members is what got their response rates higher, and that's why it looks like there are fewer members participating. Not surprisingly, almost all the respondents are dentists, since that's who makes up most of the membership. We also had a few lab techs in the sample as well, and a couple of other titles of folks who work in the industry. In terms of what we saw out there in the types of practices, prosthodontists are a growing specialty, with 11% of the folks that we spoke to being in there in 2022, compared to only 7% in 2019. So that's been going up. This includes 16% of non-members who said they are prosthodontists. Excuse my pronunciation is not great. AACD members are twice as likely to identify themselves as cosmetic dentists compared to non-members. And that's something that's going to be important later, and I'll touch on that in a bit when we see some of the changes that are happening in the industry. In terms of the age of the folks who participated, there were fewer respondents in the 20 to 35-year-old age range compared to 2019. And particularly noteworthy is among AACD accredited members, you folks are aging. 79% are 55 and over at this point, and that's up from 61% in 2019. So we definitely have an aging population of dentists in the organization. Next, we want to take a quick look at the practice profile here. So this kind of goes along with the age. If you look at the age for 2022, which is the orange bar, you can see that we've gone from 40 to 51% of respondents who have been in practice over 20 years. Given the fact that the age is climbing, that shouldn't surprise anybody. In terms of practice locations, a lot more of AACD members appear to be in the urban areas of the country. This is a trend that we saw starting a little bit in the past and is continuing to move that way. There are fewer small town practices among general membership and also among non-members, as it seems there are a lot of folks moving to cities. Patients are traveling quite a distance in some cases to get to see you folks. Half of the respondents say that their patients travel an average of 10 to 20 miles to get to their practice. So this is a group that's willing to travel to get your services. Not much has changed in terms of the size of the practices since 2019, with a few shifts in terms of size of practice, but not very many. As you can see here, there are, the most practices have 7 to 9 people in their organization at this point, but they're pretty steady in terms of how many folks that each one employs. One other thing we noticed here, there's slightly more solo practitioners and slightly fewer respondents in group practices compared to 2019. Those also trend back to what we saw in 2017 as well. The other thing that was interesting here is that accredited members tend to be more likely to be shifting into solo practices here, with 71% now saying they're in solo practices, which are up from 63% in 2019. Overall, approximately 3 in 10 expect to transition within the next 5 years, and that's up significantly compared to 2019. Respondents age 55 and over are also more likely to expect a transition, and I guess that comes as no surprise as they're getting nearer to retirement age. So we want to drill down on a couple of the things that we've been talking about here for just a second. As you can see, the data suggests a large proportion of accredited members are nearing retirement. In fact, nearly half of accredited members surveyed indicated they're age 65 and over, with more than 3/4 age 55 and also over. Also, 9 in 10 have been in practice for more than 20 years, and more than half expect their transition in their practice due to retirement in the next 5 years or so. This may suggest that some of them are either going to be selling their practices or closing them in the coming years as they further age. Next, we'd like to touch on the use of dental laboratories and technology. The number of dental labs that people are using hasn't changed much since the 2019 survey. There's a slight shift away from using 4 labs to 3 labs based on the non-members who tend to use fewer labs slightly. Members continue to use 4 labs nearly twice as often as non-members, though. In terms of in-house and outside labs, compared to 2019, there are fewer respondents who are using in-house labs or both in-house and outside labs. The use of in-house labs by group practice is down from 37% in 2019 to 31%, with solo practitioners slightly lower also, down from 28 to 25%. Among the labs, most accredited members continue to identify their primary lab technician as an AACD member. This is just over half at 55%. Fewer general members and very few non-members identify their lab techs as AACD members, with only 4 in 10 saying they don't know. Okay, we made a change in this question and just took a single response, but nearly as many respondents indicated that the reason they use several labs is because of the differing specialties in different labs. Aesthetics remains the top reason that people are selecting a lab. Compared to last time, procedure or specialty is another frequent consideration, and that's the only one that has increased since 2019. Another thing that we're seeing is the use of chairside technology, including CAD/CAM, has increased steadily since 2017, although the changes in the proportion of non-members make it appear to have fluctuated. Among members, both general and accredited, the use of chairside CAD/CAM increased slowly from 37% in 2017 to 39% in 2019, and it's now up to 40%. Use of digital smile design and 3D printing has increased compared to 2019, with now we have 4 in 10 using digital smile design and 1/3 of the practices using 3D printing. The 3D printers are most often being used for prosthodontics and occlusion. Use for orthodontics is also notable, considering that 29% of respondents indicate their practice performs orthodontics. Apologize if this slide may be a little hard to see, but we wanted to get all of this on one page for you. If we look at this, we can see that members are using technology more often than non-members, and using technology is driving up their revenue per patient. Now we want to move in talking a little bit about what procedures people are doing and what the revenues are from those various procedures. As you can see on the slide here, the procedures that each practice is completing is pretty similar in 2022 to 2019. In terms of what dentists that took the survey would like to see more of, the only thing that really popped up is they'd like to see more veneers, followed by implants and implant-supported dentures. In terms of the number of veneers they do at once, about 3/4 of them say they're averaging 4 or more. Dentists who are under 35 and those in smaller practices are tending to only do 1 or 2 at a time. Looking at the average patient spend per year here, we can see that overall spending has increased on a per patient basis. Right now, general members are getting somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,900 per patient, while accredited members are getting about $8,400 per patient. Non-members, on the other hand, are only at about $3,700 per patient. In terms of the number of procedures, most have increased slightly, except for direct bonding, which is down by about half. And there was also a slight decrease in whitening. The average cost per procedure can be seen on the slide here. The average cost of most procedures is slightly higher compared to 2019. Every member type had its largest increase for whitening procedures, and general members had the highest increases for most procedures. Compared to the study in 2019, accredited members reported more veneer procedures, but far fewer crowns and bridges and direct bonding. General members reported a large increase in the crown and bridge work that they've been doing, while non-members performed the most implants with an increase of 154 per practice compared to 2019. As you can see here, accredited members report the highest cost per procedure for all of the procedures except bleaching and whitening. There's very little change in the overall average revenue per practice compared to 2019, or for that matter, compared to 2017. Accredited members have just under $1.5 million revenue, with general members at about $1.3 million, and non-members are about $800,000. Now we want to take a quick look at some of the trends mentioned by dentists in the survey. The most expected trend for the next 5 years are similar to what we saw in 2019. We see more respondents are indicating digital imaging and impressions, when in the last study, they were more likely to be talking about more digital and CAD/CAM. These may or may not be the same things. The growth of corporate dentistry remains one of the most often mentioned potential disruptions of the industry. Also, we're seeing disruptions to the economy, such as the pandemic, and specific examples of higher costs or a problem finding support staff or having to pay them more have increased since 2019. Other topics that came from respondent comments that could be disruptions include the fact that people are feeling the need to do constant training to keep both the dentists and the technicians up to snuff on the current software and digital systems that are now getting used, particularly where new materials are involved. And there aren't enough trained CDTs and MDTs out there, and new training options are needed to get more of those folks into the industry. Some other things that we saw here is that dental support organizations sell a lot of elective dental procedures, and there's a movement to extract teeth that could be saved and replaced with restorations. Patient-centered care with less emphasis on specific procedures seems to be needed here to maintain patient respect and trust. Now we're just going to recap a few of the highlights. In terms of a summary overall here, some of the things that we saw are that members charge more for the same procedure. Particularly accredited members charge the most for every procedure except whitening, with general members charging more than non-members for every procedure, including whitening. Compared to 2019, average prices reported by general members were at least 10% higher for every procedure. Overall, accredited members practice averaged about 1.5 million in revenues compared to 1.3 for general members and 850,000 for non-members. Members are using chairside CAD/CAM systems, 40% of them, more than non-members at 31%. Practices with chairside CAD/CAM systems have a higher average patient spend and higher total revenues than practices that do not use these systems. Members use digital smile design more than non-members. Practices using digital smile design have a higher average patient spend and a higher total revenue. Members have 3D printers more than non-members. Practices with 3D printers have a higher average patient spend and a higher total revenue. Members are steering towards less invasive procedures. Several members expressed concern about DSOs pushing or selling invasive and unnecessary procedures. They worry this is going to impact the credibility of the whole industry. On average, accredited members perform the most veneers and increased both veneers and inlays, onlays compared to 2019. General members are performing the most crown and bridge procedures. Non-members are the ones doing the most implants. Dentists expect increasing use of digital dental impressions going forward. They are also thinking the growth of corporate dentistry is among the most common concerns that they have for the industry. They also have fears about the economy, which is another one of the things that are among their largest concerns. That's all we have for you today. If you have questions or would like additional information, please contact the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry. Thank you for your time.